Okay, the last little bit of 6.1, what we're going to do here is undo compositions. So this is telling me that capital F of x is the composition of f of g of x. Another way to write that is f circle g of x. So f circle g of x. Hang on. Neutral color here. F circle g of x. So we're supposed to find f of x and g of x. So f of x is going to be our input function. Oh, backwards. G of x is going to be our input function. My bad. So this is our input function. So basically we have to figure out what we could replace in the composed function so that when we put them back together, it would make square root of x plus 1. So there's almost always going to be more than one possibility. One of the guidelines is that your input function cannot just be x. Well, actually, neither function can just be x. Because then it wouldn't really be two separate functions. It would just be cheating and cheap, and we're not going to be that way. Okay, so if our input function is g of x, then basically we have to figure out what can I take out of this function that I could replace with the letter x. In this first one, if I use square root of x as g of x, then f of x would be like if I replace this letter square root of x with x, f of x would be x plus 1. So the way that we check this is by doing the composition. So we check by doing the composition f of g of x. F of g of x, we won't check all of them, but I'm just going to show you how that works. F of g of x would be f of square root of x. And since f of x was x plus 1, that means we replace the x with a square root of x and then plus 1. And we see that we end up with what we started with. Okay. On all of these on this page, our input function is going to be g of x. So that'll be consistent for us. So g of x would equal. Remember that g of x cannot just be x. It has to be some bigger chunk than that. So if I can take out x plus 3, so if g of x is x plus 3, then where I would need to put the x would be 1 over x. So if I think about doing, checking my answer and going back and doing f of g of x, that would be f of x plus 3. F of x is 1 over x, so I replace the x with x plus 3. Okay. There's oftentimes more than one possibility. So starting on these next ones, we're going to look at more than one possibility if more than one exists, which I think I can find more than one for all of them. Okay, on this problem, if I make my input function kind of similar to the first one I did, if I make my input function square root of x, then my f of x function would be, well, I'm going to take that square root of x out and replace it with an x, so it'd be square root of 1 plus x. But alternatively, I could make my input function the whole radicand here, 1 plus the square root of x, and then f of x would be, I'm taking all of 1 plus square root of x, so f of x would be square root of x. Okay, let's look at another one here. F of x equals 2x squared plus 3 inside absolute value. Okay, so if I make my input function, if I make that 2x squared plus 3, so that whole inside there, 2x squared plus 3, then my outside function, or my, I don't know what you call that one. It's not the output function. The input function is g of x. I don't know what you call the other one. So I'm taking that whole other 2x squared plus 3 and replacing that with x. So f of x would be square root of x. But I could also make g of x just the 2x squared. If I do that, then f of x has to be different, because now I'm just replacing 2x squared. So that would be absolute value x plus 3. But I could also just make my input function the x squared. So if I just make it x squared, then I'm taking only the x squared out, and I'd have 2x plus 3 in absolute value. So f of x would be absolute value 2x plus 3. Now, when you're doing these on my math lab, I'm not sure if it's multiple choice or if they give you one of them and you have to say what the other one would be. Like if they give you the input function, then you have to say the other function. Excuse me. But on a test, if there's more than one possibility, I'll accept any answer that works, as long as neither one is just plain x. Okay, next one. We got 2 left here. If our input function here, if I just use the whole entire denominator and make it 5x plus 2 squared for my input function, then I'm replacing that entire denominator with my input function, so it would be 4 over x, because then I put all of that in for x. But I could also do, kind of related to that, instead of squared, I could just do 5x plus 2. So I could have 4 over, just kidding. I could have 5x plus 2 for my input function. It was the other function I was already onto. So then I'm replacing just 5x plus 2. So now I would need 4 over x squared for my denominator. Or I could just replace with 5x. And then f of x would be, so I'm just replacing the 5x. So it would be 4 over x plus 2 squared. And then a little trickier one, I noticed that 4 is 2 squared, and I also have 5x plus 2 squared. So this one's kind of sneaky, but if I made my input function 2 over 5x plus 2, then to get back to 4 over 5x plus 2 squared, I could just make f of x x squared. That one's kind of a complex one. Okay, next one, last one actually. If g of x, our input function, is the entire radicand, 1 minus 5x plus 2 squared, then f of x would have to be just square root of x. Or I could make my input function 5x plus 2 squared. Then I'm replacing this whole chunk right here with the letter x, so it would be 1 minus x inside the radical. So f of x would be square root of 1 minus x. Or I could make g of x be 5x plus 2, and then f of x would be, let's see, so now I'm just replacing 5x plus 2, so it would be 1 minus x squared inside the radical. So square root 1 minus x squared. Let's see, are there any others? Oh, well, could I make it just 5x? If I make g of x 5x, then f of x could be square root of 1 minus, now I'm just replacing this piece, x plus 2 squared. Yeah, that works because then my input would replace that x. I think I got all of them. So as you can see, there's lots of different possibilities. My best advice to you is just try something, but then double check it to make sure that when you do the composition, when you redo the composition, it actually comes out correctly. Maybe even try one and then ask me or ask someone nearby you to check and see if your composition works. But lots of different possibilities. And like I said, if I ask you a question like this on a test, I would only need one of those possibilities.